Hi, my name's Phil. I like talking about politics, and in this video I'd like to discuss the attempted advance on the culture wars front that some Conservatives in Parliament and in the media, who of all people seem to be allowed to make knowingly false statements to the public around the acquittal of the so-called Colston 4, the Black Lives Matter protesters who made such an impact in the summer of 2020. But first, if you'd like to be notified of daily news and politics, please subscribe to the channel and click the bell notification icon. So this video is going to basically be in two parts. The first is to explain the legal realities of the case and the verdict, as explained expertly by an experienced criminal barrister. But I'm then going to discuss the politics of why right-wing commentators in the media and politics are making a big issue of this, because that is rather more serious. So the legal case first. In summer 2020, 4 people arranged to topple the statue of Edward Colston from its intended resting place and encourage a Black Lives Matter protest to throw it into the water. They did this, they didn't deny their role in the affair, there were no arguments at all in the case about who did what, only whether it was lawful or unlawful to do it. Now, short bit of background because it's important. Edward Colston was a slaver, and the people of Bristol have tried to have the statue removed as an offence to modern sensibilities many times, but been blocked by special interest groups. It is therefore reasonable to suppose that the people of Bristol were not at all happy about venerating a man who traded in people like they were commodities. But the case itself, the charge was criminal damage. Now, in order to prove criminal damage, you have to prove 4 things. First, that the defendant damaged the property. This was disputed as the statue was not in actual fact damaged and is currently on display at a local museum. Second, that the property belonged to another. This is not disputed. It belongs to the people of Bristol and the council acts in trust. Third, that the defendant intended to damage the property or was reckless as to whether it would be damaged. This is disputed. The defence suggested that there was no intention to damage, only remove it from its place. Fourth, that the defendant did not have a lawful excuse for damaging the property. This is also disputed. The defence case claimed that the statue's previous location represented the crime of displaying indecent material and that it was within sight of people likely to be caused distress by it. This is unlawful. So the argument was that, one of the arguments was that the placement of the statue represented crimes and that the act of removing it was to prevent that crime being continued. These are both well-established legal excuses for proportionate criminal damage. And like I say, given that the statue was not actually damaged, you could well put forward the defence that the act was a proportionate response to what the defendants genuinely believed was an actual crime in having the statue there in the first place. It is easy to argue that a prominently displayed statue of someone who brutalised people for his own profit would be indecent and that it would cause distress to people in sight of it. Indeed, the defence argued this. Now, I'll post a link to a full explanation of the relevant details from the secret barrister, who is an absolute master of making tricky legal events accessible to non-legal minds. There are a number of other legal wrinkles to this as well. It's well worth reading. Honestly, it's not dry and boring. It doesn't take that long and it explains everything. But those are the basic facts for the purpose of this video. Now, some people may think that of course they committed criminal damage, but you have to prove 4 elements, and it's clear that a reasonable person, once you break down what those 4 elements are, it's clear to me that a reasonable person isn't going to be automatically convinced of 3 of them. And as a juror, you only need to be less than convinced on one of those 4 to dismiss the case. It isn't that you only have to find them guilty of one of those 4. You have to find them guilty of all 4 of them and be very sure of that fact. So we're not even saying that the jury acquitted them because it wasn't criminal damage. They just weren't sure that it definitely was. You know, it's better to let a guilty man go free than an innocent man go to jail type of justice. The other thing to bear in mind is that we do not know why the jury acquitted at all, only that they did. Unlike judgments where a judge will write a detailed script about their thinking, a jury doesn't do the same with their verdicts. In fact, it's not even allowed. So anyone claiming that the jury acquitted because of this point of view or that point of view or for this reason is lying. Unless they were a member of the jury, they do not know. Even the judge does not know the reason. And if they were a member of the jury, they'd not be acting lawfully in disclosing the reasons. But then the political bit. The reason the government are making a song and dance about this, you may think, is because, well, of course they seize on every opportunity to advance their culture wars as a way of dividing the public. And this is true. But there's potentially a more sinister motive here. The Attorney General, in attacking the jury's verdict, is doing nothing less than attacking the entire way that our legal system operates. It is well known that the government wants to make itself the final arbiter of all decisions, legal as well as political, set themselves up above the law. Right now, our courts are essentially independent. They're not politically controlled as in the United States. The government wish to change this, and they are intent on changing this. However, they've already attempted to destroy accountability and have not always succeeded. The disaster of the Owen Paterson affair, for example, shows that the public outrage can still stop the government committing atrocities of this kind. So the government, by poking at the Colston 4 verdict, which the vast majority of people will know nothing about, they get a whole section of the public on their side that there's something not quite right with our legal system and that it should be changed. Because there will be people who may well agree that that statue should never be there, but will still think that it was criminal damage. And because nobody knows anything about this case, there are those cheering the verdict, even though they haven't a clue what happened in the trial. And there are those who are decrying the verdict, who are equally ignorant of anything to do with the trial. You ask any of the people, for or against, shooting their mouths off in public about what the crime of criminal damage entails, or what the defences of the defendants put forward in that trial, they won't be able to answer you. There'll be people who are going, oh, that's the wrong verdict. So, okay, so what was the charge? You explain to me exactly what criminal damage requires then. They won't be able to answer you. Or, so what defence did the defendants put forward? They won't be able to answer you. But similarly, there's just as many people saying, of course it's the right verdict, but they've been saying that before the trial. They haven't heard the evidence. They haven't heard the arguments, but they're still saying that anyway. You know, these people on both sides have just had in their own minds what the verdict would be based on the event itself, before the case had even been heard. Most people in this country are happy to read a few lines about a case in a newspaper and come to a verdict themselves based on their own biased view of natural justice. All very genuinely. But most people commentating on this case on both sides are equally ignorant of the case, and all of them run the risk of undermining the entire system to the benefit of a fascist government who is looking for opportunities to take full advantage. For example, saying the verdict was based on the notion that this jury of Bristolians agreed that the Colston statue was an offence and should have been torn down is not only factually wrong, but is playing into the government's hands. Because there are people who buy all this crap about statues being history. Oh, of course, they're attacking history. The same people who will be outraged that a statue being moved from a city centre to a museum, where it is in the city centre, it's a clear representation of veneration. In a museum, it's an actual historical artefact. But these same people don't appear to mind that the Conservative government have closed down 800 history departments in libraries since coming to power in 2010. Where's the outrage over that? But claiming that the jury acquitted because of this reason or that reason, when the reason is unknown, is only adding credence to what Conservatives are falsely claiming as well. Because there will be people who go, well, I don't agree with the acquittal for that reason. So by putting forward that reason, you're actually harming the situation. They acquitted because of this reason you don't agree with. We should change the system so that can't happen in the future. That's what the government are doing now. And the way that they will change that system is by giving Conservative ministers the right to overrule not just judges, but juries as well. That is an authoritarian move. And they'll do it claiming to be acting, wait for it, the will of the people. In this case, there is literally a situation where the government are arguing that jury, the people, are the enemies of the people. By overruling the people in the jury, they will be claiming to be enforcing the will of the people, like all authoritarians. And that is what we need to be careful of. It would be better to say that the Colston four were acquitted because the jury were not convinced that the prosecution had proven its case of criminal damage. That is both factual and much less divisive when it comes to culture wars. The government want these culture wars to take over control of the country. Helping them is not in the interests of people opposed to the dissolution of democracy. But those are my thoughts. Let me know yours in the comments below. I hope you found the video interesting. If you did, don't forget to click the like button. If you'd like to support the channel further, please also click the Patreon link for details. And until next time, I'll see you later.